Welcome to Legendary Physique. I'm Richard Baldwin, your host, and I'm talking to Jerry Brainum about his December Applied Metabolics newsletter. Now we've got a problem. Skype isn't working here for us this month, but I put a picture of Jerry up there. That's Jerry. Hide Jerry's picture. But he's on, so you can hear him talk. So, Jerry, last month, November, you had this long article, had all sorts of great ways to save money,
Right.
mainly by what supplements work, which do not, and all that sort of stuff. That was worth a year's worth of your newsletter right there.
Well, that's one of the key features of my newsletters. You see, the thing is, Richard, I'm not connected or I'm not on the payroll of any supplement company. So I can tell you the 100% unvarnished truth. And I'm not out to hurt anyone's business, but I'm just basically telling the people the truth. Let them decide for themselves. And by doing so, they're going to basically find out which supplements work and which ones don't. And some of these supplements are very expensive. So they're going to, my newsletter, $10 a month. It more than pays for itself
Yeah.
by just giving them that information alone. That information alone, if you think
Yep.
about it. You
And
know,
that's not counting all the exercise physiology that you have on there that keeps people from getting injured and stuff. So,
sure.
yeah.
One of the features of myself. There's other people that have publications. Let's face it. They have websites and blogs, but not many of these people have been around as long as me. I've been doing this stuff for 55 years. That's more than most people who watch my videos or even read my newsletter have been alive. And the thing is, I'm one of those people that learn by experience, and I remember all my mistakes. So what I do in my newsletter is try and impart to people things I've done wrong so that they don't do them. And I also back it up by current science. In other words, and if I do encounter a study, let's say a study on exercise science, and my experience tells me that the findings are wrong, I'll say so. I say, hey, look, unfortunately, what these guys are saying, or for example, let me give you a thing that's very common. A lot of these studies use untrained college students as subjects. Now, the problem is that they'll come to a conclusion that, the untrained college students didn't make gains doing 4 sets, so therefore you need 5 sets. They're making this blanket statement. But the truth is, the way ranked beginners respond to exercise is completely different than the way somebody with maybe a year of training or more under the belt responds. They're two different animals.
Yeah.
So I point that out in the newsletter, and it's to the point where I'll say something like, well, the researchers did make some good points. However, their conclusion is not applicable to everybody. If you're advanced, forget what they said. In other words, it doesn't apply to you. It just doesn't apply.
Well, the thing is, you read more books and articles than anybody I know.
That's
You
true.
keep up with material. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I trust you.
I,
Plus, you
I mean,
understand the scientific method and you can tell bullshit when you see it.
I literally, I'm constantly looking at new journal. I must go. I don't have a number, but I must look at least 300-400 journals every month related to exercise and nutrition and general medicine. I look at them. I'm always looking for new stuff. So I'm about as up to date as you can get on this stuff. Even medical doctors aren't as up to date as I am because they don't have the time
Yeah.
to look through many journals. They'll get a couple of basic journals and that's it.
Well, it's fun for you where it's a
I
drag
love
for other people. So we
I
get the
love it.
benefit of all that condensed in your newsletter.
No, I enjoy it because learning new things is like an adventure to me. It's like I don't know how to compare it. It's just fun. It's actually literally fun to me. So I never get bored of doing it.
Well,
Bring it up.
I'm retired, and I just submitted an abstract for a paper to deliver at the University of New Mexico on at a classics convention. So they accepted it. So I'm going to be talking there about Euripides' tragedies.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm still into classics,
right, right.
and they
This,
thought what I had to say was significant. So I'm having fun in retirement, but I'm
but that's
still
what
studying and reading.
you do it because I assume that you want to learn things, but you also enjoy it at the same time,
Exactly.
and that's what motivates you to keep reading and learning the thing. Let's face it, if we both hated this stuff, we wouldn't be doing it. It'd be, you get turned. I'll give you an example. I was looking at a new TV show the other day, and it seemed good for the first 20 minutes, and then it turned stupid. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time watching this thing.
Yeah.
And I turned it off. I don't have time. And I picked up a book and I started reading. I'm not going to fry my brain watching nonsense. This stuff was drivel. I'm not going to waste my time. It's the same thing. If it was a good show, I would have watched it to the end. In other words, I wasn't motivated to watch it because it just didn't interest me. And that's the way I think the human brain works.
Well, I like classic literature, but I also try to read in quantum mechanics and in evolutionary biology, paleontology. But so, in fact, Doug Bernoulli, he's interested in that too. So we've had some discussions about paleontology.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's varied interests. It's great. I mean, I have a lot of varied interests. I mean, besides science, I mean, I still have an interest in history, for example. I love reading a lot of historical books and all that. I mean, I've had that interest since I was when I was 8 years old. I hand wrote a book. That was the first book I wrote.
Wasn't that on the presidents or something?
Presidents. Yeah. 8 years old. Yeah. 8 years old. I had this art paper, this big, and I had like a little pencil, and I wrote biographies of every president up until then. The current president was Dwight D. Eisenhower. That's how long he was. I wrote biographies of all of them. I mean, at 8 years, I mean, think about it. How many 8-year-old kids are interested in the history of the U.S. for 8-year-old? 8.
Well, all that research that you do all the time makes me excited about what you've come up for December.
Okay, yeah. Well, I got some really good stuff. Like, for example, the first article. Now, as you might remember, a while back, I know it might have been 2 years ago. So I did a pretty big article on underlying factors of muscle hypertrophy.
Yeah.
Of course, hypertrophy refers to growth.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a scientific word for growth. So I did this article, and it was kind of an under the hood thing. Like, what are the factors that actually cause, and how do you influence these factors? But then, in the interim, in the 2-year interim, there's been some new research in muscle hypertrophy. So I figured I should do an update. But this time, rather than concentrate on the molecular factors, I concentrate on the broader pictures. In other words, what are the training techniques that will stimulate muscle hypertrophy and here's the key word, just about everyone. Regardless of your genetics, it makes no difference whether you're a fast gainer or easy gainer. These are the techniques most likely to increase muscle size in anybody, all based on science. And I didn't just go by the med journals. I also, as I always do, injected my own personal experience, based on my training with people.
When you were a bodybuilder, yeah.
As a bodybuilder, and I trained with guys like Arnold. Everything I know in my experience, empirical knowledge, I put in the newsletter too.
I mean, how many years have you been a member at Gold's Gym?
1969. It's almost embarrassing.
So you also have experience watching people do the wrong thing.
Oh my God!
And get no gains. So
I remember,
you see both ends.
I remember I was a science editor of Muscle and Fitness for 10 years. I interviewed, I don't even know how, countless bodybuilders about their training and diet. So I have a broad experience in that. And I put it into the articles, as a way of directing people in the right direction. Yeah. So that's the first article. It's a pretty big article, too. I mean, this article is the equivalent of about maybe 3 or 4 normal-size articles. It's big, I probably should put it in 2 parts, but I'd rather just give it all so people get the leisure. They don't have to read the whole article once. They can read it whenever they want, So, and then the next article, I get a lot of questions about, I don't know if you heard of an amino acid called citrulline.
Yeah.
Citrulline.
Didn't you talk about that in last month?
No, I didn't. I mentioned it briefly as part of
one of those paragraphs. Yeah.
Right. There was some study presented at this nutrition conference, but I wanted to go into more detail about citrulline because it's a very interesting amino acid. So I have this complete article, just about everything you need to know about citrulline, how to use it, what works best, the conditions under which it won't work, and so on and so forth, and what it will do for you, including some just brand new studies that just came out. They're also included in the article about citrulline. So when you read this article about citrulline, you'll know everything there is to know about citrulline. And of course, again, I hasten to add that I'm not involved in any company that sells citrulline. So I'm not trying to have anyone buy this stuff. In fact, I do list some negative aspects. I always give the whole picture, both sides. I never, I'm not these people that are selling supplements. They always only focus on the positive. They never give you the bad parts. But I cover both. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I like the stuff you had on enhancing memory too last month.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What?
I like the material you had on enhancing memory last month too.
Yeah. That's true. I
Yeah.
actually included my. Uh, I put a little teaser on Facebook. I talked about my. I just discovered a new technique that involves what they call smart drugs, and people ask me, and I said, you know what? I'm going to put it in my newsletter so my subscribers can see it first. So I put it
Another
in there.
perk.
Yeah, no, that combination. Anybody who takes it, who's involved in intensive study, anything that requires focus or concentration, it'll give you like a laser like clear brain where it's an amazing effect.
Yeah.
You know, I don't take it every day.
Yeah.
I only take it when I'm actually writing, honestly,
Yeah.
because I don't want if you keep using it all the time, it probably won't work after a while. So
Yeah.
I reserve it only when I need it. You know, it's kind of like this stuff called modafinil, which a lot of people use. It's you know, it's one of those things that, you know, it's a drug to treat a disease called narcolepsy, but people use it to sharpen their brain. It's kind of like a strong form of caffeine. But what people realize is if you use it every day, after about 2 weeks, it doesn't work at all. So, you know, a lot of stockbrokers use it. It's very famous stuff, but that's the way these things work. The third and final article, because this is a huge issue. This issue is actually 53 pages.
Wow.
So it's, but you know, I'm sure you're aware. Just about everybody is. You know, Rich Piana. You know who he is, right?
Yeah.
You know, Rich.
Yeah. Who he was. Yeah.
Who he was. You know, the big guy with the tattoos and the foul language and all that. You know, a very popular YouTube personality. I mean, this guy, when he posted a video, within 2 days, it had like 500,000 views. But anyway, the point is, of course, he passed away, and when he passed away, they issued an autopsy report not long ago, about a month ago, I guess it was, and I looked at this autopsy, and then I started looking at videos. People the day the autopsy report came out, there was about 20 videos on YouTube where these self-styled experts were giving their theories about what caused Piana's death.
Yeah.
And it was so ridiculous, and these people were so off base. I said, wait a minute, hold on. Somebody's got to write something about this. You know, see, the problem with Piana's autopsy is there was no toxicology report. In other words, they didn't test what was in his blood. So, you know, you had a general picture of his internal organs and all that. But based on what the autopsy showed, in this article, I gave my opinion as to what caused his death, and I explained in concise detail why I came to that conclusion. Now, I had here's the interesting part. I had written the article. It was done, and you know, I'm getting ready to edit, and all of a sudden I go online. Just like 3, maybe 4 days ago, now a new autopsy's been released, and now it's this kid Dallas McCarver, you know, the 26-year-old who just dropped. He supposedly was eating a meal, and he killed over, and he died while he was eating. And sure enough, the same thing happened. I go on YouTube. There's 30 videos already talking about Dallas McCarver's autopsy, and once again they did it wrong. Because I read the autopsy. This time, unlike Piana, McCarver had a toxicology report, and the toxicology report revealed a couple of things, which I explained in the article, that likely does explain why a 26-year-old guy suddenly drops dead like that. Because you know, you don't have to be a doctor to know that it's unusual for 26-year-old guys to drop. You know, it just doesn't happen very often. Something has to cause it. You know, it's not what they call dying of natural causes. I mean, not a natural cause. So once again, and this is what made the article kind of long, because I covered McCarver's autopsy much more in depth than any of these videos, and I explained the likely cause of his death, and a lot of it has to do with genetics, not just his steroid use. But let me put it to you this way: I will give this teaser. McCarver was using a scary amount of steroids. I mean, you know, and he also had genetics. He had bad genetics for cardiovascular disease, a family history of cardiovascular disease, and hypertension. The point being, this is what I told the guy in the gym the other day. He died at 26, but the way he was going, he would have never made it to past 30 anyway, unless he changed his lifestyle, his steroid use. It was basically, and I use this expression in the article, he was a dead man walking. And I don't say that out of glee. I mean, I never met McCarver. I heard he was a really nice guy. I feel terrible about the guy dying, even though I didn't know him. But he was on a suicide. He was like a kamikaze guy. He was a guy, a speeding car heading for a brick wall, and he hit the brick wall. But I'm saying, and I explain why in the article. I mean, and people might say, well, why did you write an article about the deaths of these two guys? For two reasons. First of all, they were very popular, both of them. But Carver was an heir apparent for the Mr. Olympia title, right?
Yeah.
And the second reason is both of these guys, for different reasons, this is the main reason why I wrote this article, can serve as examples of what happens when you use either large doses of steroids or long-term use of steroids. In the case of Piana, this is a guy who had self-admitted using steroids for 27 straight years. This is his own statement. So, you don't see this in a lot of medical journals because they don't cover, they do, the studies about steroids are usually very short term.
Yeah.
Very rarely see any long-term results. These guys were human examples by their own doing of what happens when you use large amount, I'm not just talking steroids, I'm talking large amounts of steroids. In other words, athletic proportion use of steroids for many years. That's why I wrote the article. So people can get an idea of what happens. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen to everybody, but, there's a good chance if you follow similar, let's say, steroid regimes, you're in the same category as these guys. You're high risk.
Yeah. And some young kids need to know that.
They need to know. And, a lot of my readers are middle-aged, older guys, even as old as me. But the thing is, it's a lesson to them, too, because some of these guys, a lot of these guys are on testosterone replacement therapy, which is very safe. We're talking a completely different animal.
Yeah.
The doses that they use, the athletes use, and the doses for TRT are like two different animals, and there's no relation between the two. However, I've had older guys approach me where, they feel good on the testosterone replacement. They say, hey, Jerry, you know what? These guys are like bodybuilders or former bodybuilder. They say, you know what? I want to get a little growth spurt. What happens if I add nandrolone and winstrol, a little bit of trenbolone, right here after a while, we're talking about like 8-9 drugs. So even though they probably won't take it in the doses that these two guys did, the point is once they start doing that, multi-pharmacy, or whatever you want to call it, they're in a whole different ballpark. Anything can happen. So this is a lesson for them too. This is my point. It's a lesson for anyone who contemplates using massive amounts of anabolic drugs.
And the usual dose I hear from guys who are doing it are somewhere between 100 and 200 milligrams a week.
Are you talking about TRT?
Yeah.
That's true. That is, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I did an article, you probably might remember, in Applied Metabolics, because what was it, 2 years ago? I can't remember. Some top medical journal, I think the Journal of American Medical, maybe the New England Journal, they came out with some studies indicating that testosterone, normal testosterone replacement, not the athletic use, the normal doses are very bad for your heart, will cause heart disease. And I looked at these right away. I mean, I'm thinking, wait a minute, hold the phone. What the heck is this? So I went online and I got a hold of the studies. I'm reading. I'm saying, my God, these are so flawed. They're ridiculous.
Yeah.
So insane.
I thought they'd done studies that showed that low testosterone was bad for your heart.
They do.
And if you have it, you should be taking some anabolic steroids to, low dose.
Chronic low testosterone is related to heart failure.
Yeah.
Heart failure, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I looked at these. There was, I think, 3 studies that came out. And these were major medical journals. Mm-hmm. And I had to write an article on Applied Metabolics because even as soon as I saw them, and I actually downloaded them the day they came out. I saw it in a news item. I went right to the sites and got them immediately. And I'm reading them saying, these things are crazy. I mean, first of all, they didn't measure. I mean, you can read the article. I won't go into it a lot, but they didn't measure estrogen. Estrogen in high amounts is far worse for a man's heart than testosterone.
Yeah.
Far worse. Second of all, in one study, they gave older men who had severe heart disease, they gave them triple the dose of testosterone to start with. Why would you do that? Why would you give an old man who has heart disease 3 times the dose? It doesn't make any sense. And sure enough, within a month after I wrote the article right away, but a month later, a whole bunch of medical organizations, including, I think it was the AMA, these big endocrinologists, they all issued statements saying that those studies should be ignored because they were severely flawed.
Yeah.
And I said it first. I pointed out in my article. See, so to answer your question, you have it right. Low testosterone is far more dangerous than having elevated testosterone to a point.
Yeah.
However, when you're taking the dosages that athletes and bodybuilders do, like the dosages, like I mentioned for Dallas McCarver, what they found in his blood, now you're in unknown territory. Now, forget about the benefits. It's like I use the expression hormesis, and I did an article on this. What hormesis is basically something that is very beneficial up to a certain point, and then when it gets past the point, it's like a U-shaped curve, reverses and becomes toxic. And that's everything falls under exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, if you do a certain amount of exercise, your muscles are going to grow. Everyone knows that. But if you go past that, if you start doing 100 sets per muscle, you're going to backslide and you're going to lose muscle.
Yeah.
Same with supplements. If you take a certain amount of a supplement, you're going to get benefits. If you swallow the whole bottle, now you're going to get problems. And that applies. And it's same with testosterone. Having a good level of testosterone is fine, but if you get to the point where it's like massive amounts, now you're going to cause problems. It's that simple. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, I can't imagine how much the pro bodybuilders are taking today, because back in the 70s and 80s, I knew a bodybuilder whose training partner told me he gave this guy a 200 milligram shot of test every day, and that was only one of the drugs he was taking.
Every day, 7 days a week?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good amount of testosterone. I mean, that's more than Richard. You know what people fail to realize? Check the medical books if anyone doesn't believe me. Do you know how much testosterone a man produces at the peak of his testosterone production? We're talking about 19 years of age. The maximum amount any man produces. You know what it is? 10 milligrams. 10 milligrams. Your body is made to accept 10 milligrams. Now, I'm not saying that if you take more than that, like a 200, 100, 200, that it's going to cause a problem, because a lot of that testosterone, you have to understand, the reason why it's not dangerous is if you take a 200 milligram shot, first of all, you're not getting 200 milligrams.
Yeah.
Some of it's the oil. It comes out to something like 170, 150, that, you're not really getting the first thing. The second thing is, let's say now you're getting 150. Of the 150, a lot of that is going to be broken down, and it's gradually released. You're not getting, when you take a oil-based testosterone injection, like ananthanate or cypionate, it's oil-based, and it's that, and what it means is it's time-released.
Right.
You inject it intramuscularly or whatever. It's stored in the fat as a bolus, a big little bowl of oil, and it's released gradually, supposedly over a month period, but the truth is it actually peaks in 14 days, testosterone oil-based. But the point being that you're not getting 150 milligrams at once. You're getting what is the equivalent of only a little bit, believe it or not, only about 10 to 20 milligrams are being released into your blood. So your body says, hey, everything's cool. It's normal. So no, let's say you're a guy who's older man who's not producing any testosterone. When you take that shot, and it's releasing 10 to 12 milligrams in your blood, your body's saying, okay, everything's back to normal. We're fine. So, that's why a 100 to 200 milligram shot is not going to screw you up.
Yeah.
Now, if you're taking that 200 milligrams every day, and you're taking the fat-based thing, now, there's going to be a lot more testosterone released that could create problems. And initially, you won't have a problem, because the way steroids work, a lot of people don't realize this, is when you take large amounts of steroids, your body actually opens up new androgen receptors to accommodate the extra testosterone. But this only works up to a point. There's only so many testosterone androgen receptors that'll open. Eventually, they're going to be filled.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the testosterone now can go anywhere. I mean, it can turn to estrogen. Of course, you can take estrogen blockers, but it can turn into DHT and cause hair loss and skin problems. They have drugs for that too. But the point is, even if you avoid all that, you can have what they call non-genomic effects of testosterone, where it has nothing to do with the androgen receptor, but it can still cause problems. That's a whole different. It would take too long to talk about that. But my point is, the basic point I'm trying to make is the TRT, the doses that they give anywhere from 100 to 200.
Yeah.
The only problem with 200 that I see is there's the main side effect that men over 40, again, men over 40, this doesn't happen with younger men. Men over 40, if they get on testosterone injections, if the dose is over 150 milligrams, 50% of men who initiate TRT will get elevated hematocrit. What that means is that they start to produce too many new red blood cells, and their blood viscosity or thickness gets too thick. That's a little dangerous because it's related to heart attacks and strokes. It happens to 50% of men, but it only happens if you take a dose over 150. The good news is good news is two things. It's very easily treated. If you show a hematocrit over 59, I said 59? No, what am I talking about? Over 54, I think it is. 54 is the cutoff. You go and have some blood taken out. You're okay. It's that fast. Okay. The other thing is, and I wrote this in my newsletter, I don't think a lot of doctors even know what I'm about to tell you. The new studies show that even if you have an initially elevated hematocrit, for some reason, nobody really knows why, after 6 months, your body accommodates to the testosterone, even if you take 200, and it goes down. The hematocrit goes down to normal. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. I've seen this happen with about 15 older guys. They had initially elevated hematocrit. They would take 200 milligrams, and about a half a year later, they had another blood test, normal hematocrit. Happens every time. So, again, if I draw a line into the whole thing, I know we got into this whole discussion of this.
Yeah. Kind of got off the December issue here. Yeah.
Yeah. But the point is that my point is, I'll just say that for the vast majority of men, especially if you are shown to be clinically deficient in testosterone, I would say the testosterone replacement therapy is perfectly safe. The whole thing about prostate cancer is all bullshit. That's been disproven over and over again.
That's caused by estrogen, too high estrogen, isn't it?
Exactly. Estrogen, the estrogen A, it's called estrogen A receptor. See, there's only one androgen receptor, but there's two estrogen receptors, A and B.
Yeah.
Stimulation of receptor A, estrogen receptor A in the prostate stimulates the normal growth of cells. It does. But the interesting thing is that estrogen B, which is also found in the prostate, blocks the effect of estrogen A. And here's the most ironic thing of all, Richard. This is going to make you laugh. Estrogen B, which is protective against prostate cancer, guess what stimulates estrogen B? This is going to throw you off your chair.
What's that?
The thing, soy protein, the thing that all these bodybuilders.
Holy mackerel.
Oh, I'm not going to have soy. It's terrible for you. Soy is a specific stimulator. It doesn't stimulate estrogen receptor A. It stimulates the B receptor. It protects you against prostate cancer. So these guys are avoiding the thing that protects them against prostate cancer. They have no idea. But
I didn't know that.
Nobody knows. Most physicians don't know that. The only people that know this are researchers in endocrinology. Most physicians have no idea. They might know there's two estrogen receptors. Yeah. They don't know how one affects the other. See?
But this is exactly the reason that I suggest people get your newsletter.
Yeah, and by the way, I did talk about these two estrogen receptors in a past issue. So readers of my Applied Metabolics newsletter know about this effect of estrogen. And here's the interesting thing: I have new research on these estrogen receptors that I haven't written yet, but I'm going to write for my newsletter that I don't think anybody knows this stuff except the researchers that did the study. No doctors know what I'm about to. No doctors. So anyone who reads my newsletter, seriously, and I'm not trying to, act like, extend uterus here or anything like that, but what I'm saying is you will be so far ahead of the crowd as far as knowledge about this stuff. It'll be like you're on a different planet. You'll know things that will you see these things on the web? Yeah, you will. You know when? 5 and 10 years from now. Yeah. But if you read my newsletter, you can get it. It's that simple.
Well, that's great. It really, really looks like another good issue. And man, I wish you a Merry Christmas too. This is the December issue coming out, so happy holidays, man.
Right, you too. Absolutely. Right. And I hate to sound like an advertisement, but I think a great gift for people would be to subscribe, to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, because, I just want to point out that even though it seems like it's entirely centered on bodybuilding and fitness, the information that I offer, for example, on nutrition, applies to people that don't even work out.
Yeah.
I'll give you a real quick example. Right now, I'm working on the first article for the January issue. I'm working on the truth about detoxification. Have you heard detoxification diets and programs?
Yeah.
People detoxify all the poisons in them.
Yeah.
We're surrounded in a sea of toxins, and we have to detoxify, right?
Yeah.
I have a great article. I'm working. It's like extensive article on the truth about detox. And here's the interesting thing. Remember I talked about how I don't always agree with doctors? If you go to the average doctor and say, hey, doc, which detox program should I use? He'll say, that's all bullshit. You don't need any detox. The body detox itself. It's your liver and kidneys are your detoxification. As long as they're working, forget that detox. It's all bull. I found by research that's not true. In other words, there are certain, let's say, poisons and toxins that get past your liver and kidney, that get into your body, that could screw you up. In my article, I'm going to tell you how to deal with them and neutralize them. So this is an example of something that somebody who works out, of course, can use that, because this applies to stuff like steroids too. But the point is, because steroids could be toxins in large amount. But the point is, even if you never touch a weight in your life, you want to know this stuff, because this is general health information, So that's an example of what I'm saying. So again, in relation to Christmas, anyone who, if you give this a subscription, which is very, as you know, it's what, 33 cents a day.
Yeah.
My newsletter could literally save people's lives. I swear it can literally save people's lives. There's no doubt. No doubt.
Mine either. That's why I became a subscriber.
Yeah. And it'll make you live longer too. I mean, if you're using the drugs, Dallas McCarver and Rich Piana, I'm not going to bullshit but anything I tell you is not going to extend your life. I'm talking about normal people that, even let's say you take moderate amounts of anabolics, or I have a lot of things in there that will that allow you to stay healthy, stay fit, and keep your muscles where, all the way till, like a Richard Baldwin at 90 years old, still showing. That's my goal. That's my goal.
All right. Well, it's great talking to you. And we want to wish all of our viewers a Merry Christmas too.
Yes, and a Happy New Year.
All right. And we'll be back January 1st.
That's it.
If you want the latest in exercise and nutrition science, then sign up for Jerry Brainum's Applied Metabolics newsletter.